I never thought I would be the kind of woman people whispered about. The kind whose name lowers voices at dinner parties. The kind neighbors look at differently once they know. The kind who becomes a lesson instead of a person. But here I am, typing this out because I don't know where else to put the truth. I'm Vanessa. I was married for 6 years. And I destroyed my marriage before I even realized I was doing it. From the outside, my life looked polished. The kind of life people envy without knowing the cracks underneath. I worked in real estate, sold homes along the coast, wore tailored dresses and heels that clicked confidently across hardwood floors. Rick and I owned a beautiful house. Not flashy but solid. Comfortable. Safe. Rick built his own garage business from the ground up. Grease under his nails, stubborn pride in his eyes. He fixed engines the way some men fix lives. Quietly, patiently, without asking for applause. For a long time that was enough. Until it wasn't. I don't know exactly when dissatisfaction turned into entitlement inside me. It didn't happen overnight. It crept in during late evenings, during quiet dinners where Rick talked about carburetors and customer complaints while I scrolled listings on my phone, half listening, half resenting how predictable my life felt. I told myself I was ambitious. That I wanted more. That I had worked too hard to feel this bored. Rick didn't change. And somehow, that became the problem. Real estate was booming. Networking events, client dinners, drinks that turned into conversations that turned into attention. Men listened to me differently than Rick did. They didn't interrupt with practical solutions. They didn't talk about bills or broken engines. They told me I was impressive. Magnetic. Wasted on a small-town life. That's where Chad Bowers came in. He was introduced to me at a bar after a showing. Murphy's Pub expensive suit in a place that smelled like spilled beer and old wood. He looked out of place, and I liked that he chose to be there anyway. Chad worked in finance. Big words. Bigger confidence. He asked about my listings, my goals, my plans.
He asked about me.
The first time we talked, I went home late and told Rick it was a client meeting that ran long.
I didn't feel guilty then.
It felt harmless. Almost professional. The second time, it felt exciting. The third time, I knew exactly what I was doing and I did it anyway. Chad made me feel like I was on the edge of something better. Like my life with Rick was a draft version and he was offering the final copy. He talked about investments, penthouses, restaurants with no prices on the menu. He talked about us like it was inevitable. I let myself believe I deserved it. I told myself Rick wouldn't understand my world anymore. That he was holding me back without meaning to. That love wasn't supposed to feel so small. The lies became routine. Late client meetings. Emergency showings. Networking dinners. Rick never checked my phone. Never questioned my schedule. He trusted me completely, and I repaid that trust by perfecting my deception. I'd come home at 2 a.m, heels in hand, slipping quietly across the hardwood floor. I thought I was careful. I thought I was smart. I didn't realize Rick was listening every night. The first crack came when Rick asked about Murphy's Pub. He said someone had seen me there with a man in an expensive suit. My heart jumped into my throat, but I recovered fast. I always did. I told him Chad was a potential client. An investor. Networking. Rick didn't argue. That should have scared me more than anger would have. Instead, I felt relieved. Relief turned into confidence. Confidence turned into recklessness. Chad and I started meeting at hotels downtown. Discreet places. I used the joint credit card without thinking twice. It felt unreal, like play money. Like Rick's savings were an abstract concept instead of years of his life spent under cars and engines. I told myself I'd pay it back. I told myself everything would balance out once I left Rick and started fresh. That was the plan in my head, even if I never said it out loud. When Rick confronted me with the hotel receipts, I panicked. Not because I was sorry, but because I was caught. I cried. I said I could explain. I said I loved him. I reached for him like muscle memory, hoping familiarity would save me.
He didn't yell.
That hurt more than shouting ever could. When he told me he was done pretending, something inside me snapped. Not grief. Not remorse. Fear. I realized then that Rick wasn't the passive, clueless husband I'd turned him into in my mind. He was watching, calculating, pulling away quietly. Still, I thought I could control the situation. I underestimated him. What I didn't expect was how fast everything would collapse. Within days, my phone started buzzing nonstop. Friends asking if I was okay. Colleagues canceling lunches. Clients postponing deals. Whispers followed me through the office. Conversations stopped when I entered rooms. My reputation, the thing I had built my entire identity on, was unraveling. I blamed Rick.
Of course I did.
I didn't know how much he knew yet. I didn't know what he was planning. I just knew the safety net I'd counted on was disappearing beneath my feet. And the worst part? Chad started pulling away. Calls went unanswered. Messages got shorter. He was suddenly busy. The man who promised me a bigger life was already creating distance from the mess he helped make. That's when real fear set in. I realized I wasn't standing between two lives anymore. I was standing alone. And I hadn't even reached the bottom yet. The day my bank app refused to refresh, I knew something was wrong. At first, I thought it was a glitch. My phone had been acting up all morning. I was sitting in my car outside the Coastal Realty office, engine idling, scrolling through emails before going in. I opened the banking app again. Still nothing. I closed it, reopened it, typed my password slowly this time. The loading circles spun longer than usual, and when the numbers finally appeared, my stomach dropped. The savings account balance was almost empty. I stared at the screen like it had personally betrayed me. That money wasn't just savings, it was security. The cushion I had quietly planned to land on once I left Rick. The money that was supposed to give me options. I told myself there had to be an explanation. A transfer. A delay.
A mistake.
But deep down, I already knew. I had taken that money. Not all at once. That would have been too obvious. I'd done it carefully. Small withdrawals. Different days. Always under the limit. I told myself it was temporary. That I'd replace it once Chad and I figured things out. Chad had suggested it. Not directly. He was too smart for that. He just asked questions. How much do you and Rick have saved? Is it joint? Can you access it easily? I'd answered without thinking, like it was just conversation. He'd smiled and said, "You should protect yourself. You don't want to walk away with nothing." I let myself believe that was concern. Now I wasn't so sure. I walked into the office pretending everything was normal. Smiled at Ashley at the front desk. Returned calls. Showed properties. Sold a beachside condo that afternoon like my life wasn't actively falling apart. That night, Rick didn't say a word to me. He cooked dinner. Ate quietly.
Didn't ask about my day.
That silence felt heavier than any accusation. I tried to tell myself he didn't know about the money yet. That I still had time. That I could talk my way out of this like I always had. Then the phone call started. A client canceled a listing. Another asked to reschedule indefinitely. One flat out told me she'd decided to go in a different direction. By Friday, Robert Davidson called me into his office. He didn't smile. "Vanessa," he said carefully, "there are concerns." He slid papers across the desk. Bank statements.
Dates. Times.
My chest tightened. He said Rick had come by asking questions. Said something about forged signatures.
Theft.
Police recommendations. I felt my face go hot. I tried to explain. Paperwork mix-ups. Stress. Miscommunication. Davidson didn't interrupt me. That was worse. When I finished, he sighed and leaned back. "You're one of our top agents, Vanessa. But this could damage the entire firm." I nodded. Apologized. Promised to fix everything. He didn't promise anything back. That night, I called Chad. No answer. I texted him. Then again. Then again. When he finally responded, it was hours later. "Hey, things are complicated right now. Maybe we should slow things down." Slow things down. My life was imploding, and he wanted to slow things down. I drove to Murphy's Pub that night, not to meet him, but because I didn't know where else to go. The bar felt smaller than I remembered. Louder. less glamorous. People looked at me differently. Or maybe I just imagined it. I ordered a drink and stared into it, wondering how everything had slipped so far, so fast. That's when I saw the Facebook post. Sienna had tagged me. A photo of Chad and me at a restaurant weeks earlier. His arm around my waist. My head tilted toward him, smiling like I didn't have a husband waiting at home. The caption talked about following your heart, about new beginnings. I felt sick. Within minutes, the likes and comments started rolling in. Some supportive, some curious, some clearly judgmental. There was no going back now. I drove home in silence, rehearsing what I would say to Rick. Apologies, explanations, tears if necessary. But when I walked into the house, he wasn't there. The lights were on, dinner untouched, the TV muted. It felt like a house waiting for a verdict. When Rick finally came home, he looked calm.
Too calm.
I asked him if he knew what people were saying about me. He asked me if I knew what a forged signature was. The argument didn't explode. It collapsed. I admitted to taking the money. Tried to justify it. Tried to explain that I needed security. That I was scared. That Chad had influenced me. Rick listened like he was filing information away, not reacting to it. When I asked him what he wanted from me, he didn't answer right away. That terrified me more than anger. The next few days blurred together. More canceled clients. Fewer calls. Whispers turned into open questions. Chad stopped responding completely. I realized then how disposable I was to him. How easily I had been folded into his life, and just as easily removed. One evening, Rick finally told me to pack my things. He said it without shouting. Without cruelty. He said it like a decision already made. I begged. Not because I loved him, but because I had nowhere else to go. He told me I could leave quietly, or he could involve the police. I packed. As I zipped my suitcase, surrounded by a house that no longer felt like mine, something finally broke inside me. Not my pride. My illusion. I hadn't been chasing happiness. I'd been chasing escape. And now, there was nothing left to escape to. Leaving the house felt unreal. I stood on the front porch with a suitcase in my hand, staring at the door like it might open again if I waited long enough. Rick didn't come out to stop me. He didn't say goodbye. He didn't even look at me. That silence followed me all the way to my car. I drove without a destination at first. Past streets I used to show clients. Past homes I had sold with confidence and charm, promising fresh starts and happy endings. I wondered how many of those people would still smile at me if they knew what kind of person I really was. I ended up at my sister's place. She didn't ask many questions. The rumors had already reached her. They always do. She let me sleep on her couch. That first night, I didn't cry. I just lay there staring at the ceiling, replaying everything in my head, trying to find the exact moment where things went wrong. The problem was, there wasn't just one moment. There were dozens. Hundreds. Small selfish choices stacked on top of each other until they crushed everything underneath. The next morning, I checked my phone. No messages from Chad. I don't know why I expected any. I finally swallowed my pride and called him. It rang once, twice, then went to voicemail. I didn't leave a message. I already knew the answer. A few hours later, I got an email from my brokerage. I was being placed on administrative leave pending an internal review. Clients had filed complaints. Concerns had been raised about my professional conduct. My name was becoming a liability. Everything I had built my identity around was unraveling. I tried to defend myself at first. Told people there was more to the story. That things weren't what they seemed. That I was under stress. That mistakes had been made. No one cared. People don't want explanations from someone who broke the rules. They want distance. Within weeks, my listings were reassigned. Colleagues stopped responding to messages. Invitations disappeared. I became invisible in rooms where I used to be celebrated. Rick filed for divorce. I wasn't surprised. What did surprise me was how clean and organized it all was. He had documentation, records, timelines. Everything presented calmly, like a man who had already done his grieving and moved on to resolution. I tried to argue for fairness. He didn't argue back. He just let the facts speak. The stolen money, the hotel charges, the timeline of the affair. I saw myself reflected in those documents, stripped of excuses and justifications. On paper, I looked exactly like what I had been trying so hard not to see. A woman who betrayed someone who trusted her completely. The divorce was finalized faster than I expected. I didn't fight it. I didn't have the energy anymore. I lost the house, the savings, the marriage, most of my career. What I didn't lose immediately was my pride. That took longer. For a while, I told myself Rick had overreacted, that people were too harsh, that everyone makes mistakes, that I just got unlucky. Then the nights got quieter. Friends stopped calling. The social circle I'd relied on moved on without me. No one wanted the drama. No one wanted to be associated with the woman whose life imploded so publicly. That's when the regret finally arrived. Not the dramatic, cinematic kind. The quiet kind. The kind that shows up when you're alone in a borrowed bedroom, scrolling through old photos you can't delete yet. The kind that hits when you remember how Rick used to make coffee every morning without being asked. How he fixed things around the house without complaining. How he loved me in ways that weren't flashy, but were real. I had mistaken stability for boredom. I had mistaken loyalty for weakness. I reached out to Rick once. Just once. I told him I was sorry. That I knew it didn't fix anything. That I didn't expect forgiveness. He replied politely. Briefly. He said he hoped I learned from this and wished me well. That was it. No anger. No longing. No opening. Just closure. That hurt more than hatred ever could. As for Chad, I eventually heard through mutual acquaintances that he'd moved on. Another woman. Another new beginning. His life barely slowed down. Mine did. I took a smaller job outside real estate. Less money. No prestige. Just work. Honest work. The kind I used to think was beneath me. Some days, I still feel the urge to blame everyone else. Other days, I don't. I see my role clearly now. I wasn't trapped. I wasn't neglected. I wasn't powerless. I was selfish. I chased excitement and called it ambition. I chased validation and called it love. I took advantage of someone's trust and convinced myself I deserved it. And when everything collapsed, I learned a lesson I wish I'd understood sooner. You don't lose everything all at once. You lose it piece by piece, every time you choose yourself over your integrity. If you're reading this and thinking about crossing a line because you're bored, lonely, or curious, don't romanticize what comes next. There's nothing glamorous about starting over when you're the reason you had to. I'm not asking for sympathy. I just wanted the truth somewhere. Because pretending cost me everything.